Have you ever wondered if the legend of Atlantis is actually a true story? Could it be that the mighty island kingdom actually existed and might even be rediscovered one day? For centuries, archaeologists, historians, and treasure hunters have been trying to uncover the true background of this ancient mystery. But what if we told you that there are 5 areas that are currently more suspected than ever to embody the true Atlantis? Are you ready to join us on a journey into the exciting world of Atlantis theories? Then be sure to watch our video all the way to the end. But before that, we have a quick question for you. Make sure that you have already left us a like and a subscription. If not, then catch up quickly and tell us in the comments what you think. Did the island kingdom described by Plato really exist? And if so, where could its remains be? The most exciting and interesting comments will get a heart and will be pinned at the top. The myth of Atlantis. If you want to find out what the roots of the legendary Atlantis myth are, you have to turn back the wheel of time to the 4th century before Christ. According to this, it was none other than the famous Greek philosopher Plato who publicized the legend of the mighty island kingdom in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias. Even though it is still unclear where the ancient Greek drew his knowledge from, his descriptions are considered to be the most important and detailed sources within Atlantis research. From the mentioned works, it is clear that Atlantis was an equally prosperous and powerful empire, whose ruling line descended from the gods themselves. The magnificent main island was surrounded by an interlocking ring system of water and land, crossed by an imposing canal. The center of the capital, in turn, was a large hilltop plateau that housed the royal palace and a magnificent temple. Stocked with the most valuable raw materials, exotic animals, and delicious fruits, the inhabitants of this flourishing island were considered the most advanced people of their time. As a result, the inhabitants of Atlantis were not only extremely adept at developing groundbreaking technologies, but also at warfare. In detail, the Atlantis fleet consisted of 1,200 ships and 250,000 soldiers who conquered and subjugated countless countries. However, it was also this unlimited drive for power and influence that ultimately doomed Atlantis. Because the people of the island indulged in absolute megalomania and developed an insatiable thirst for war, they aroused the wrath of the gods. This was compounded by the fact that the divine original race of Atlantis had become more and more mixed with the ordinary mortals, thus contaminating the sacred lineage. After the army of the island kingdom had been stopped by the hopelessly outnumbered Athenians, the court of the gods decided that Atlantis had to perish. Thus, within a day and a night, the sea power was struck by a devastating natural disaster and wiped off the map of the world for all time. Truth or legend? Okay, so much for the legend of the Atlantis myth. However, before we take a closer look at the 5 presumed sites, let's briefly address another, much more fundamental question. Did the island kingdom described by Plato really exist at all? The question has divided mankind into 2 camps since antiquity. Both sides have plausible arguments for their view. Those who do not believe in the existence of the legendary empire consider it more likely that we are dealing with a classical Platonic myth. Accordingly, the philosopher by no means intended to portray a historical factual account, but to create a metaphorical narrative that conveys a higher content. For example, it is conceivable that the saga was intended to make the Athenians think. When the dialogues were written, Athens, like Atlantis, was pursuing an aggressive expansionist policy. Regarding this theory, however, critics point to some not-so-insignificant facts. If Plato really freely invented the Atlantis myth, why did he not also clearly mark it as a fictitious myth as he usually did? Even more, the story was actually marked as Logos Aletheus, which translated means a true account. And even if the narrative possessed a deeper meaning, for example, by confirming Plato's theories of the state, it could only have been authentic if it also contained a kernel of truth. And once apart from that, would it really have been necessary to describe Atlantis in such detail and in all its blazing facets if the empire was to serve exclusively as a symbolic content carrier. Last but not least, there would be the fact that Plato also took up the Atlantis narrative in some other dialogues, which are undoubtedly related to real history. But what is the use of the most valid arguments and the most conclusive theories if solid archaeological discoveries are missing? No matter how much we argue about the veracity of the lore, without official evidence, it will continue to be an unconfirmed myth. So where could the ruins of the legendary island kingdom be hiding? Well, we find the first exciting trace in the territory of today's Azores. The Wrath of the Universe. One thing is certain. Some exciting archaeological finds suggest that the Azores were already populated in the Stone Age. For example, the Portuguese explorer Nuno Ribeiro once discovered a hypogeum here, that is, an underground burial vault, the traces of which were typical of this era. However, when it comes to the question of the location of Atlantis, Otto Muck argued that the ruins of the mighty empire should be located in this very region, in the context of a combination of the most difficult clues, among them the migration of eels to the Sargasso Sea, the end of the Ice Age, and striking linguistic affinities. The Austrian drew an almost frighteningly detailed picture of the real Atlantis. Thus, we learn in the book Atlantis Found, Criticism and Solution of the Atlantis Problem, that the empire sank on June 5th of the year 8498 before Christ at 13 o'clock sharp. Thereby, the disaster had literally fallen down from the sky on the sea power, namely in the form of a near-Earth small planet from the Adonis group, which crashed east of Puerto Rico into the Atlantic. This was followed by a series of primordial volcanic eruptions that led to the dramatic subsidence of the Atlantis Plateau. Bolivia. Possibly the key to the solution of the Atlantis riddle also slumbers in the Andes. In 2015, a mysterious red metal object was found here, which is mentioned several times in Plato's stories and is called Oriheracon. In detail, this is the Greek name for brass, that is, an alloy of copper and zinc. Among other things, Oriheracon ingots have already been found in the belly of a shipwreck that sank off Sicily 2,600 years ago. Some researchers suspect, however, that this material is an imitation of those copper and gold alloys that were formed in the South American Andes some time ago. Against this background, it is conceivable that Atlantis once adorned a volcanic island on Lake Poopó in Bolivia. Crete. Already in the late 19th century, the Frenchman Louis-Guillaume Figuier connected the eruption of the island volcano Thera with the sinking of Atlantis. In detail, the so-called Minoan eruption occurred in the 17th or 16th century BC and led, among other things, to the sinking of the Akrotiri settlement in the south of the Greek island of Santorini. Called Minoan ruins in reference to the mythical king Minos, the theory soon arose that the remains excavated on Crete at the beginning of the 20th century might represent part of the Atlantis described by Plato. Subsequently, many other researchers also saw Crete as a red-hot Atlantis contender. Originally, the people are said to have blossomed 25,000 years ago. The inhabitants, whom Plato later described in his dialogues, would therefore have been their Bronze Age descendants. Andalusia. The roots of the Andalusia theory go back to the 16th century. Thus, the Lost Island Kingdom would have been located on the present site of the Donana Marshes. A very similar approach was taken by the Spanish historian Juan Fernandez in 1911, when he stated that the capital of Atlantis was once located at the very spot where the salt marshes of the Marismas de Hinojos now greet us. If these interpretations have a true core, the Atlantis legend would have been closely interwoven with the ancient kingdom of Tartessos. According to the ancient tales, the port city was located on the southern coast of the Iberian Peninsula and enjoyed a fabulous wealth of metals. Since Tartessos was literally overflowing with silver, it was probably something like the European counterpart of the legendary El Dorado. Antarctica. Comparatively new is the idea that Atlantis was once located on the continent of Antarctica. According to this hypothesis, what presents itself today as a pitiless world of ice was inhabitable thousands of years ago. According to this hypothesis, the devastating natural catastrophe that led to the sinking of Atlantis was not a flood of biblical proportions or an extreme earthquake, but a sudden cold snap. This frosty event is said to have been released thereby, quote, a shift of the Earth's axis, and/or a rapid shift of the geographical poles. This fundamental knowledge should have already been revealed to us by the old Egyptian Neith priest, who said concerning the cause of the catastrophe, in truth, however, it concerns a deviation of the celestial bodies orbiting the Earth. So people, and now we're curious about your opinion. Do you think that the legendary island kingdom of Atlantis really existed? And do you think that one of the 5 featured sites actually hides its lost ruins? As always, drop us your thoughts, suggestions, and feedback on today's video in the comments below. While you're at it, remember to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to stay up to date from now on. Finally, feel free to take a look at the other exciting videos on our channel that we've linked for you here in the credits. And with that, thanks for watching, take care, and see you next time.